To get started, open Google Earth Pro from your desktop. Links for downloading Google Earth Pro, which is a free program, are in the description. First, navigate up to View and make sure that Toolbar and Sidebar are both checked on. This will allow you to see the relevant tools. In the sidebar, you will find the Address Search field, which lets you search for buildings by address. Below the Address Search section, there is the Places section, which you can just leave collapsed. It's not important for this video. Finally, below Places, there's the Layers drop-down section. Some options here may be checked by default when the drop-down is expanded. Having borders and labels, roads, and terrain checked can be helpful. There are several other options as well, which may be useful, but are not needed for basic measuring and viewing operations. The toolbar is located at the top of the screen and contains several tools. The tools we'll be focusing on here are the Historical Imagery tool, the Ruler tool, and the links to Google Maps and Google Earth. To view a specific building, navigate to the Address search bar. Enter the address in the search bar and hit Search to zoom into the building or address you're interested in viewing. Once the building is in view, you can zoom in or out using the mouse scroll wheel, or by clicking the plus and minus buttons on the right. You can change the viewing direction by clicking and dragging on the compass in the top right corner. To access Street View, drag the yellow figure onto a blue line on the map. When you're done, click Exit Street View to return to the overhead view. The first tool we'll cover is the Historical Imagery tool. This tool allows you to look at various views of the building, taken at different points in time. The best practice for measuring or reviewing the building is to find a view that is directly, or almost directly top-down. To use this tool, select the Historical Imagery tool from the toolbar. Clicking the Tool button may immediately change the image you see. That's normal and expected behavior. You can use the slider or arrow buttons to move between different historical views. There are several useful things this tool can help with. It can allow you to see when newer buildings were constructed, when roof work was done, or when solar panels were installed. Look at the irregularly shaped building with solar panels on the right. If you drag the slider back in time, you'll see the solar panels disappear. Then, by moving the slider forward again, you can narrow down the time when they were installed to between October 2014 and January 2015. Another use for this tool is viewing buildings under different foliage conditions. For example, looking at this area of trees, if there were a building under these trees that you wish to view or measure, you could drag the slider backward or forward in time until you reach an image where the leaves have fallen due to the season. This doesn't always render the clearest view, but it can reveal structures that are otherwise obscured in the default imagery and can be very useful. It's important to remember that imagery may not always be available for all buildings, particularly in remote or rural areas, or for buildings that are very new and have not yet been imaged. If you intend to use Google Earth as part of an inspection, the best practice is to quickly look up the building and determine what imagery is available before conducting the site visit. Coming back to the building we'll be measuring, start by finding the best view using historical imagery. Again, looking for a basically top-down view of the roof. Zoom in so that the building fills most of the screen, and it can be helpful to rotate the image so that the building appears more or less square to your view. To measure the building, you'll use the Ruler tool. This tool can be useful for determining the footprint of buildings and for finding distances between them. When you click the Ruler tool, a new window should appear. Make sure the map length unit is set to feet. There are many unit options available, but feet is typically the most useful for this type of work. Click once on a corner of the building. Then release, and drag a yellow line to the next corner. The length of that line will display in the ruler window, measured in feet. For example, this line reads approximately 42 feet. The tool will measure to 2 decimal places, so for practical use, you may need to round up or down. So that's 42 feet. This side is about 28 feet long. This side is about 11 feet long. To measure this building for the purposes of diagramming, you would continue to drag the line tool around the full exterior, noting the measurements as you go. This gives you the outside dimensions, which you can then multiply by the number of floors to get a total square footage. You can also use the line tool to measure internal spaces, such as courtyards, and subtract them to obtain a more accurate square footage for the building. The ruler tool also includes some other features that can be useful. First is the polygon tool. It's not an accurate tool for measuring buildings, but it's good for large areas. Remember that you can always click the clear button to restart the drawing. Let's say we want to know the size of the large grassy area surrounding this building. We can use the polygon tool to quickly determine the size. Make sure the units are appropriate. Just click along the edges of the area you want to measure. As you click, the tool will draw the perimeter automatically and calculate the area enclosed. In this case, we can see the area is about 7.81 acres. This can be great for measuring parking lots, interior building cutouts such as courtyards, or other large open areas. Another useful feature is the circle tool. This tool can be used to determine what is near a building by setting a radius around it. For example, if you wanted to know how far away the nearest waterway is from a particular building, you could use the circle tool to find out. To do this, click the circle tool, then click on the building or object of interest and drag outward to create a circle. The radius measurement will be shown in the ruler window. This allows you to zoom out and adjust the circle size until the radius reaches the feature you're evaluating. In this example, we can see that the nearest waterway is about 1,800 feet from the building. In some cases, just looking at the building from the top down won't tell the whole story. There are additional Google tools we can use to get a better view of the building and to look at parts of the building that may not have been accessible during the inspection. One great tool for this is Google Earth on the web, which offers an excellent 3D view tool. To access Google Earth on the web, you could type it in the web browser, or you can access it from Google Earth Pro by clicking the blue globe button at the end of the toolbar. This will bring up the address you were viewing in the browser. It will typically default to a 3D view, but it's important to note that if historical imagery is checked, the 3D view will not work. Make sure that you uncheck historical imagery at the top of the screen if it is checked. There are several tools at the top for measuring the building. These tend not to work as well as the tools in Google Earth Pro. Using Google Earth Pro tends to be more accurate and easier. The 3D view can still be useful for looking at the building. So looking at this building, we can see that there is a rear extension. If you drag and hold, you can move the view in 3 dimensions. You can zoom in and zoom out using the mouse. Looking at the front of the building, we can see this building is 3 stories tall. We see that it has an extension, but we don't know how many stories the extension is. If we turn the building around, we can see that there are 2 stories visible above the extension, meaning this extension must be 1 story. This is important for calculating the square footage and can be very useful for identifying additions in the rear of buildings. For example, if the inspector could only access the inside of the building during the inspection, it may not have been obvious that there was an addition at the back. But if you look at it in 3D view quickly, it's obvious that there is an extension that should be included in the report. The other use case for 3D view is looking at buildings with very complex shapes. Buildings like this can be very difficult to understand and diagram using only a top-down view. It's not a common scenario, but the 3D view can be very helpful when it does occur. This is a great tool to use as a supplement to the building measurement in Google Earth Pro. Another tool that can be useful for gaining information about buildings is Google Maps. Google Maps is useful primarily for the historical imagery in its Street View feature. Google Earth Pro also has a Street View feature, which can be useful, but which does not feature historical imagery. Street View in Google Earth Pro can be accessed by clicking on the yellow figure at the upper right and dropping it on any of the blue lines. This will take you to Street View, and you can look at any imagery available. In this case, we'll be looking at the construction of this building. Again, this Street View does not have any historical imagery. Click Exit Street View at the upper right to return to the top-down view. Street View in Google Maps can be accessed from a browser, or by clicking the Google Maps button on the toolbar in Google Earth Pro. This will open a browser tab for Google Maps, where the building you're looking at will be visible. Zoom in on the building to get a similar view, and you can find the yellow figure for Street View on the bottom right of the screen. Drop the figure onto the blue line just as before. We can see this is the same building as we viewed previously, but there is an additional window in the upper left with a button called See More Dates. This is not always present because there's not always historical imagery for every building. It is typically available for buildings in more built-up areas, especially large metro areas. The question that we want to answer for this building is how it is constructed. Clicking See More Dates provides a timeline at the bottom of the screen with various views of the building over time. The date is given on each image. So we can see for February 2022, the building was under construction. Click that view to look at images from that date. Here we can see the building being built. We see a concrete parking garage, but what is the rest of the building made of? We see wood framing here, and in the background what appears to be wood framing is visible as well. In a lot of cases, you can walk through the historical imagery by clicking on the street arrows. So let's walk up the street and look at the building from a few different angles. Not seeing much that provides additional information. Most of the building still hasn't been built. Going back down the street can sometimes reset the historical imagery to the default latest imagery. If this happens, just click See More Dates again and select the date that you're looking for. In this case, we'll try January of 2023 to see if there's any more recent imagery of the building where it is still under construction, but is a little more built out. Here's the building, obviously still under construction, but all the cladding has not yet been attached. You can zoom into the image using the plus and minus buttons on the lower right. We can see wood under the decking, or wood under the balconies. We can see Tyvek coverings, which would be typical if this was a frame building. We don't see any block construction. We do see large amounts of scrap wood in the dumpster. So generally, this is giving us a lot of evidence that this is a frame building with cladding, not a masonry building. It's always worth it to try walking further up the street or down the street if you can. It's not always possible, but it can provide additional views. Imagery like this is not always conclusive, but in a lot of cases, it can be very helpful in determining when the building was built or how it is constructed.